My thoughts on NBA All-Star Sunday Night 2025. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Street Ball Strategies.
Legacy ain't built in a single night. Critics bark loud saying it ain't right, but tides gon' turn, hustle in clear sight. Avatar the stars shine brighter than light.
Today I'm starting a series on the All-Star weekend of 2025. Today's video is going to be about All-Star Sunday night of that weekend. But before we get into the details of the All-Star game itself, just so I can get this out of the way, let me get the context and preface for who I am as a basketball fan out of the way in this video so I don't have to repeat it in the rest of the videos in this series. I'm probably not your average basketball NBA fan. I like to think of myself as a neutral fan, meaning I don't have any favorite players, I don't have any favorite teams. There's no leanings I have one way or the other really. But I am an ultra mega fan of the game, the sport of basketball itself. And the NBA just so happens to be the league that is supposed to have the best players and the best coaches. So it's where the best basketball is supposed to be played. So therefore, I, of course, watch the NBA. I don't follow it closely in terms of standings or statistics. I'm not that kind of a hardcore fan. I live in southeastern Michigan. You would think I would be a Detroit Pistons fan, but I have a video about why I am actually a fair weather fan, proudly and intentionally so. And when I watch the NBA, what I'm looking for most, hoping for, is high competitive basketball where, the teams, the players have the most skill and they play as hard as they can to win games against other, talented, skilled kind of players. So I want to see the best players playing as hard as they can against each other, creating the most competitive basketball on the planet. That's what I'm hoping for when I'm watching the NBA. Also, it has been my stance for many years that the NBA players are way overpaid. I believe them to be nothing more than professional entertainers who are contracted employees of their NBA teams. No professional entertainer should be making generational wealth year after year after year of their career. I don't approach the subject of them being overpaid from an economical approach, meaning the economics of it. I get it, it makes sense, supply and demand, the players, the industries that they're in, they've earned that, astronomical paycheck because of the economics and capitalism of it all. I get that, I understand it. My approach is from a common sense stance, which is they're professional entertainers. They should not be making $10-20 million every single year. That does not make sense. Our military personnel doesn't make that. Our emergency personnel, firefighters and such, they don't make that kind of money, but our professional entertainers do. That is ridiculous. We way overvalue being entertained, thus we pay whatever money it takes for us to be entertained, thus the players make those astronomical paychecks. To me, they're overpaid, and when they're overpaid, that means now you're complacent. Now you don't care. If you don't care, then you don't try. If you don't try, that means you don't compete. Because why would you compete? Competing is hard. It's difficult. You have to try absolutely as hard as you can. If you're overpaid and spoiled, why would you try when you already know you're going to get generational wealth year after year after year? There's all kinds of fallout that happens from them being overpaid that affects the entire universe of the NBA, the entire universe of basketball, and them being overpaid is one of the worst things that's ever happened in NBA history. So that's where I'm coming from. That's the context of me as a basketball fan and an NBA watcher. Now, when it comes to the All-Star game, All-Star weekend itself, what I love about it is what NBA All-Star weekend is supposed to be, what it's intended to be, which is the NBA is already considered to be the best basketball players in the world, on the planet. So these are the best basketball players currently walking our earth. And then they get voted in as all-stars. And when you're an all-star, now you're considered the best of the best. Now, let's be specific in defining what we mean by the best. It means you have the best skill, among the best players. You are the most successful among the best players in the world. And they vote you in to be in that very exclusive club for that year. The All-Star game, All-Star weekend, is supposed to be a showcase of the fact that you are the best of the best, and you get to compete against the other bests of the best. That's what NBA All-Star is supposed to be. That is what's meant to be, expected to be. That's why I at least love the concept of All-Star Weekend. Now, the problem that has developed over the last 10 or so years, however long it's been really since Kobe Bryant had his last All-Star game, has been that players don't play hard. They don't take it seriously, they don't care, so they don't compete. And because they don't compete, they don't try to actually display the fact that they're the best of the best. That doesn't entertain us because they're not trying or competing. Over the last few years, the NBA has played with the format of the All-Star game to try to get the players to compete a little bit more. Here in 2025, the format has changed to, instead of a regular All-Star game where you have one team against another team and you play a full regular game, this year Adam Silver went to how many teams was it? It was like four different teams, and they played a tournament style throughout All-Star Sunday night because Adam Silver apparently loves tournament style basketball, and so now NBA All-Star Sunday night has become tournament style. When they first announced this a few months ago, because I'm an old school kind of guy, I didn't really like the thought of it. I was just like, why don't they just leave it the way it is and, let the players either play hard or not, I guess. But in the months since then, I kind of have backed off from that. Like I was kind of extreme of just let it be the way it was. I came back more to the mindset of okay, well, the mid-season tournament, that's happened a couple years now. That's been okay. There's not been really a downside to it that I've seen, and players have played a little bit more competitively in that tournament, so I'm okay with that. Same thing with the play-in tournament at the end of the season. I'm okay with that as well. So when it came to the tournament style for the All-Star game, I was like, okay, well, at least let's give it a try and see how it goes. The NBA knows what it's doing in terms of that tournament style stuff, so I don't really think that it's going to be a disaster. I just don't know how successful it's going to be. And it turned out, there was 3 games, and the first game was actually fairly competitive. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say it was probably mostly a 6, with instances of maybe a 7 on the intensity and competitive scale. So, watching that first game, I was hopeful. I was like, okay, this is more like it. This still isn't really good, but it's at least better than what we've become accustomed to over the last 5 or so years. The problem then was game 2, game 3, we got what we're used to getting, which is, no defense, no real intensity, no real competitiveness, boring because of it. Games 2 and 3 were mostly let down, boring, completely forgettable games. So I have a few takeaways from All-Star Sunday night. Number 1 being that fans who were still severely frustrated and disappointed with how Sunday night went, to me it's it's unfair to expect the NBA to go from where the All-Star game has fallen to 0 to 100 over one single year. It's not gonna go from terrible back to spectacular in one single year. That's not fair for us as fans to expect that from the NBA. Some fans say, well, that's how it went with the NHL. They went from 0 to 100. Well, okay, I'm great. That's great for them. I don't know anything about that. I don't know how that happened, or I don't know anything about that. I'm glad that happened for them. I just think that it's unrealistic to think that the NBA is going to go from as terrible as it has been to the very next year for it to be somehow spectacular. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a good expectation to have, and if you do have that expectation, of course you're going to be disappointed. When I posted these thoughts on social media, on Facebook, on the NBA, posts that were happening in real time during the NBA All-Star Sunday night games, part of what I said was, for the people that have come to hate the NBA and do nothing but complain about it because over the last handful of years it's become popular to hate on the NBA while you continue to watch it. For those fans, like, no matter what the NBA does, they're always going to complain. They've gotten themselves into a cycle and a pattern of hate and complaining where, like, it doesn't matter what the NBA does. They're going to hate and complain because now they've worked their way into that cycle and that pattern. And so for them, of course they're going to hate. Of course they're going to complain no matter what the NBA does. And even if they did go from terrible to amazing the next year, they're still going to hate and complain. My next takeaway from the NBA All-Star Sunday night was, I do think the main takeaway in terms of, was it bad, like the quality of it compared to years past, was that at least they're trying, right? At least they're experimenting. Many comments I saw Sunday night was that the NBA isn't listening to us. I made the comment, like, they're at least listening because now they're at least trying and experimenting. They wouldn't be experimenting with new different stuff if they weren't listening to us as fans, because why would they? If they weren't listening to us, it would be less difficult. It would cost them less energy, effort, and money. That's the key, money. It would be less money just to keep the NBA All-Star game the way it was, East versus West, with a full game. It would be much less everything for the NBA to keep it like that. But instead, because they have heard us, at least they're trying, at least they're experimenting. That's what matters most to me. Effort, be it in basketball or in life, effort is one of the things in the world that means the most to me. Effort means you're trying, and trying is a direct indicator that you care. People that care try at whatever it is. People that don't care never try. And I hate those people. I hate the people that don't care because they don't try. But the NBA has been experimenting this year with the All-Star game, changing up the format, bringing in all that pomp and circumstance, the music, the concerts, the intros, all that stuff. They're trying, they're experimenting, which signifies to me that they have heard us. Because they can't please everybody, there's always going to be some large, swaths of fans that are going to have complaints. They can't please everybody all the time. So instead, you just experiment with stuff, like throw ideas at the wall and see what sticks. Why not? The rumor was that the All-Star game was on the verge of being canceled anyway. So if that's the case, why not, just start experimenting with different stuff and see how fans react to it? When you do that, reality is that most stuff is not going to work. Most stuff is not going to be amazing. But because you're at least trying, there is going to be some stuff here and there that does kind of actually work here and there. And then you can build from that stuff moving forward. That's exactly what the NBA is trying to do. Because I love basketball, because I love All-Star Weekend, to me it's like, well, at least they're trying. I'm grateful at least for them to be trying. It wasn't great, it wasn't even good, but at least they're trying to go that direction, and they're doing that because they heard us. And I think the NBA is self-aware enough to know that, okay, still wasn't good, but there was some good points to take away from this format change. Going forward, let's try to keep trending in a positive direction. They're trying, they're putting an effort. To me, at least that much has been happening, so at least I have that glimmer of hope moving forward for the All-Star Weekend. My third takeaway is all of that pomp and circumstance, all the music, all of the intros, all of the non-basketball stuff that took place. I saw many complaints about that as well, how there was only less than a third of the broadcast on Sunday night was actual basketball play. The vast majority of it was all of that concert music, pomp and circumstance kind of stuff. And look, as a hardcore basketball fan myself, I completely understand where those fans are coming from. But the reality is, since The All-Star game has started being, I think they said that it started being broadcast on national TV in like 2001 or 2003, somewhere around there. Since then, the All-Star game has not been about us as hardcore basketball fans. I'm sure back in the day when the All-Star game first started, it was exclusively for, you know, the hardcore basketball fans who are in the arena watching the All-Star game and All-Star weekend. But once it starts to become nationally broadcast, you know, and sponsors and advertisers get involved, it becomes, every year, it becomes less and less about us and for us as hardcore basketball fans, and more about families and kids. Because remember, just like I said, the NBA players are overpaid. The NBA is a business, a company whose main objective it is to make as much money as they can. That doesn't make them evil. They're just a business trying to make money. It's just that they're in the entertainment business, so it's easy for them to like hide and disguise themselves as like, oh no, we're not really a company trying to make money. We're here to entertain you. They can hide and like disguise themselves behind that, but the reality is they're a company trying to make money. And so NBA All-Star Weekend, for them, is about the advertisers and the sponsors. They're trying to attract as many advertisers and sponsors and get as much money out of them as possible. The way they do that is by saying, hey advertisers, hey sponsors, look how wide, look how many fans we have. Look how big and wide our fan base is. And they demonstrate that by saying, not only do we have these long-time hardcore NBA and basketball fans, but families also watch us, which means kids also watch us, which means that as those kids grow up, they will then turn into, eventually, the next generation of hardcore basketball and NBA fans. So that means not only do we have a huge community of hardcore fans that watch us right now, regardless of what we do and regardless of how much money we charge them for tickets and jerseys and everything related to our brand, but we're also attracting in all these other future generations of fans that are going to spend even more money in the future. Do you see that, sponsors? Do you see that, advertisers? Do you see all of the fans we have now and will have in the future? To the NBA, that's exactly what All-Star Weekend is. It's not for us, the NBA hardcore fans who want to watch the best players play basketball against each other and compete. That's not what NBA All-Star is anymore. That's not what it is. It's not for us. It's for the sponsors, for the advertisers, and for kids and families. That's what it's for, because all of that brings in the money. Money now and money in the decades to come. So all of that pomp and circumstance, all of the music, all of the fancy intros and all of that, it's entertaining the families, all about entertaining the kids, all about showing the sponsors how the kids and the families enjoy all of that. Because remember, the kids and the families, those are casual basketball fans, right? They're not the hardcore fans yet. But the NBA is trying to draw them in with all of that other fancy stuff that doesn't have anything to do with actual basketball play. So it makes complete sense to me, even though I hate it, it makes complete sense that, of course, the vast majority of what happens on NBA All-Star Sunday night is not going to be basketball related. Because the NBA knows we're the hardcore, locked-in, dependent, addicted fans who are going to continue to watch NBA regular season games regardless of what happens or doesn't happen NBA All-Star Sunday night. We're going to come back and keep watching games anyway, even if they barely show any basketball, and even if the basketball they do show is terrible, we're still going to show up the next week and watch the TNT games, 3, 4, 6 days later. We're still going to show up, we're still going to be there, they're still going to get our viewership. They already know that. So NBA Sunday night is not for us. They already have us. They already have our money, our dollars, our viewership. They're trying to get new money, new viewership. That's what all of that pomp and circumstance is about. I hate it. It's terrible. but at least it's understandable. At least I can understand it. It makes sense why they're doing it. I wish it wasn't that way, but at least it makes sense that it's that way. Oh, and it's also it's just going to get worse going forward. It's only ever going to get worse in the next 11 years or so, now that the NBA has that, what is it, 11 years, 77 billion cable TV contract going on. It's only going to get worse over the next decade, so prepare for that. And lastly is the LeBron James saga that took place Sunday night, which was right before the game. He declares he's not going to be able to play, and because he did it right before the game, that means no replacement could be named in his stead. Now, like I said, I'm a neutral NBA fan, so that goes for LeBron James as well. I don't hate him, but I don't love him. I'm not a fan, but I'm not a hater. Like, I'm just in the middle. So for me, it didn't really hit any kind of, like, it didn't push any kind of button with me when he did it. Part of me thought, well, he's LeBron James, he's kind of earned the right to kind of do that, even though obviously it's kind of selfish and arrogant, but he's kind of earned the right to do that. The only thing that I'm disappointed with, or disappointed the most with, is that, like, Norman Powell probably would have been named to and added to the team had LeBron days or weeks before dropped out and said he wasn't going to be able to play. Then Norman Powell could have got in there and had the honor of being named an all-star. I'm disappointed for him that didn't happen for him, but other than that, it didn't really upset me. I don't really care that much about what LeBron James does or doesn't do. I don't want him to retire, I don't want him to go away or anything like that, but I didn't really care all that much. So those are my thoughts of NBA All-Star Sunday night. Like I said, it wasn't great. It wasn't even good. It had glimmers of competition, glimmers of intensity. I want to shout out and give Victor Wembanyama his flowers, because he was the one standout player that night who did play like he cared, like it meant something to him, whether he won or lost, like he actually wanted to compete. He was the one player that stood out to me, that played hard with intensity. I really appreciated that about him, but other than that, games 2 and 3 were just flat, completely forgettable, and if they never would have happened, it wouldn't even have mattered, in terms of, like, it doesn't matter because it wasn't competitive, so nobody, even if you did watch, you didn't care anyway. But I did like that the NBA is experimenting and trying, and hopefully can build in a positive direction going forward. I love NBA All-Star Weekend. I love at least what it's supposed to be, the conception and intention of what it's supposed to be, and I hope, these things are cyclical. Like, we're in the bottom right now, we're in the bottom of the cycle where it's terrible and it's awful. At some point, it will work its way up to being good again. I think the NBA experimenting the way they are is a good indication that, they're going to continue to build in a positive direction going forward. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it interesting at all, then please subscribe to the channel. Let us know down in the comments what you thought about All-Star Sunday night. Do you agree with me? What were your beefs with what happened that night? How do you think the NBA could and should get better moving forward? But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button make any comment you make highlighted from any other comment, but it also directly supports the channel. So for anybody that does hit that thanks button, I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment like I said. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, see you guys next week.
Extra flavor in the pot, stirring up the brew. Crossovers, lobs, MVP, who knew? Rating rise, hoop dreams came true. NBA's trying hard, gotta give them their due.